Hello everyone, I'm Mike Delvecchio, first driver at 9C. We're just going to go over some of the differences with the new Rosenbauer rigs versus the older Peterbilts that we've had for years. I'm going to show you around the rig, show you some differences, just show you things that are different between what we have and what we have now and what we're used to. We're going to start out with some cab work. Cabs, if you looked at them, basically the same. I mean, you still have all your switches. Most of the switches are down on the dash where you're used to having them up on top. For the clean cab, we do have a clean air switch we can turn on from here, and we'll get to a little bit more of that when we get into the back of the rig and show you the clean tab feature. It's set up more like the trucks than what you're used to when the Peterbilts. The Peterbilts, it's kind of nice and snug in the rig. There's not much room between you and the officer. Here with the Rosenbauers, you actually have the engine sitting between the two of you. You sit more on the outside of the rig, if that makes any sense. So driving down the road, you always make sure you need to hug that left-hand side. If you're driving this for the first time, you definitely want to go out and practice a little bit before you actually have to take it on a Code 3 run. To be more comfortable with it, you are sitting over the wheels or in front of the wheels, which is definitely gives you a different feel. Much better turning radius than the Peterbilts. Major improvement. Also, driver's headset now are wireless. You can actually get out, sit at the pump panel, and still hear all the radio traffic. You can walk around the entire rig, which is a very nice feature. The mirror setup on the new rigs is a little bit different than the Peterbilts. We actually have two mirrors where you actually look out the front window versus the side. Big thing here is we now have a mirror that you can actually see down and see the front bumper. It gives you a lot better feel for where that front right corner is. As we get out of the cab here, we're gonna walk around here, show you the clean cab. Both sides, you have a compartment. When we're done with a fire, you put all your dirty gear or all contaminated gear in these compartments, and you have access to that compartment from both the outside of the rig and the inside. So you have access to your gear from the inside and or the outside. Also back here, we have the clean air and the air filters for the clean air cab system. That after a structure fire, you'd start that up. That way it's going to circulate the air through the filters and keep the air back here cleaner than it would be had we left our fire gear. As you can see, there's a lot more room back here, a lot more room to get ready. I mean, you got a lot more headroom. Major improvement over the Peterbilts. And we'll continue on around. Pump panel is basically the same. We do have a new, or a different foam system with Elkhart brass set up in these. I'm not going to go into much detail because as we get the new rigs, Jay Yingling in the shop and Elkhart brass are going to put together another video that will go over that more in depth. One feature that we do have with these that you don't have, and that we will have with the new Rosenbauers, is the ability to open and close the deck gun from both the pump panel and right up at the deck gun. So the operator of the deck gun can open and close that at will. Driver's compartment is basically the same as the tool compartment. Rear compartment with all our LDH is very similar. We do have, as well as 16s, also carries a portable LED light that is extremely bright. As we walk around the back of the rig, you see another new feature is the lower hose bed, which is much more functional. You no need to actually stand up on the tailboard for us shorter people to pull hand lines off. These are easy to access. LDH is easy to access. One feature a lot of people might not know about hard suction. We do have one length up top, but we also have this compartment here as our second section. Another rear compartment, more room. Most Peterbilts or all the other rigs online, with the exception of 16s, everybody has their hose packs back here. We've actually moved hose packs. This compartment on the side. So between engine 16 and engine 9, you'll find all our hose packs all in that same compartment. Peterbilts typically would carry the Blitz nozzle on the bumper on the rear tailboard. It's now incorporated into the back compartment here. Much nicer, keeps it clean. I'm sure everyone of you has seen the salt covered ones. They're on the tailboard. Front compartment here, which is very similar, same, just all EMS. Basically the same as the Peterbilts. We do have a hydraulic ladder rack that when you power it on, press and hold the down switch, give it a good 5 seconds before it'll actually start to lower. Be sure that your compartment doors are completely and tightly closed. If they aren't, the system will see that and the ladder rack will not operate. Even though you do see a green power light, the ladders will not come down if it thinks the compartment doors aren't open. One nice feature with the new rigs, on both sides of the rig, up towards the back of the cab, are some LED water level indicator lights. So you'll know how much water you have in the tank at all times from quite some distance. As long as you can see the rig, you'll be able to see what the water level is. Start out with green, turn blue at 3/4, orange at half, red at quarter tank.
Hi, my name is Jeff McCulley. I work at Station 9 on A shift. I'm first driver, and today we're going to go through some cab work and pump panel operations. Okay, we're arriving at the scene of a fire. You want to pull past the house so that the crew and the officer can get a view of all three sides. Line the tailboard up, let's say the front door or a little past. Make sure you keep your foot on the brake, put it in neutral, pull the emergency brake, and you want to put your PTO, tip it down halfway, count 1001, 1002, 1003, put the rest of the way, 1001, 1002, 1003. You'll have a green light come on. You can now hit the drive. It'll first show a 4 with the neutral, and then it'll go 4-4. Your green OK to pump light will also come on. You'll hear the RPMs rev up and your speedometer will jump up just a little bit. And you'll be in pump gear and OK to leave the cab. Okay, coming out of the cab and coming into the pump panel, I'm going to make sure my pump is engaged. There should be a green light on here. My tank to pump, I carry that open when I drive, so that's all ready to go with water. As the guys are the crew's pulling off the lines, I'm going to go back and make sure which line they pulled off and make sure it's completely out of the bed before I charge it. And say the short bank's open, I'm going to pull this here, and then I'm going to throttle up. And concerning the idle, once this is all the way up, if you had to emergency stop or accidentally hit this push button to stop it, the idle will come down on its own, and there's no way to stop that process until it gets all the way down, and then you can again throttle back up. From that point there, I want to check my gauges, and then I'm going to work on transitioning to get on the hydrant with the LDH. I'm going to hook up. I'm going to keep my valve open here to let all the air out when they charge the hydrant. Once that's completely throwing water, I'm going to close that. I'm watching the gauges. I'm going to slowly open the big way, keep it as steady as possible, and while I'm opening this, I'm going to slowly throttle down so the transition is smooth as possible, so there's no kickback on the attack lines. And then once that's all the way set, I can close my tank to pump, and depending on the situation, you can keep this, fill your tank back up. You want to fill that up as soon as possible. Sometimes you can do it right away, sometimes you can't. Personally, I keep it cracked just a little bit, so it'll kind of do it on its own if I'm real busy, a lot of things are going on, but sometimes I have to close it. And after the panel's all set, you can put the wheel chocks down, and then set up from dual pumping with a 3-inch from your intake to intake on each engine. Out of the lines. You can open the LDH, throttle down at the same time, maintain the same pressure on the attack lines, so it's a smooth transition as possible so they don't build inside. And then after that, set up for dual pumping with the second arriving engine.
I'm Bill Bruss, Station 9B's first driver. Today we're going to talk about 0700 check and instrumentation. When checking your oil on this Rosenbauer rig, it's in the front. You unlatch it, take it out. You have your oil indicator here. This is your stick. Pull it all the way out, wipe it off, and put it back in. Make sure it goes all the way in, seated, then open it back up. Check it, and you're good. Your power steering fluid is here. You got a full cold. You can also check this when it's hot. It'll say full hot. This is also where you check your or fill up for your windshield washer fluid. And that goes right here. When your rig is plugged in, your voltage meter should be at least 13 or higher. If it isn't, you should call the shop and have them look at it. Before we even start to get into your rig, turn your battery on, hit your ignition, and let the instruments register. Once you get that done, then you can unplug your rig and start it. Okay, we're going to check the lights for your 0700 check. Go in, hit the master warning, turn on all your front scene lights, and then walk around your rig. Once that's complete, go ahead and shut them all off. Your camera has 4 different views. You can have all 4 views. I personally like the one that's off the right side. That's going to be your blind spot. To change that, you're going to hit V1, V2, and it'll change it. That's the one I personally like. Also, you have a Jake brake. Your Jake brake has 3 settings. You have high, medium, and low. It should always be on. I personally like it on the medium. When it's on high, it feels like it throws you a little bit too much. It's all personal preference though. This little gauge on the panel will show you the transmission temperature, the transmission oil, the battery voltage, the hours on the engine, the vehicle speed, the engine speed, the fuel level, the DEF level, the oil pressure, the engine temperature, the air pressure in the first cylinders and the secondary cylinders, the turbo boost, the engine exhaust, and the engine load. The DEF fluid has an indicator light up here, which they recommend that you don't fill up until it has 25% left. Sometimes you'll get a check message that comes across the speedometer. When that happens, you can go down here to your settings and it'll tell you what needs to be done. Now we're going to talk about the pump panel and some of the things that are important that should be done every day when you're driving. When I come to my pump panel, I prefer my tank to pump always be out. That way I have water for sure when I get to a fire. When I go to check my relief valve, your tank to pump has to be out all the way. Your tank to fill needs to be at least 3 inches pulled out. That way the water is circulating through the pump when you're setting your relief valve. You need to check the relief valve and make sure it is set at 150. Keep an eye on your relief valve here. When your light comes on, check your pump gauge and see where it's at. It's at 170. So what you can do is throttle back down. And what you want to do is work your relief valve all the way down. And then you want to work it all the way up. Usually goes about 29 times. You work it back down. What I usually do is I count how many turns I go back, and then I count how many turns I go forward, and then subtract the 2 to get about where I need to be. Once you've done that, you can throttle back up. Again, the light came on. I can throttle back down a little bit until the light goes off. That gets me about 150 or 160 on the gauge. Once it's set, you're good for the day. Also, remember with these new engines that the throttle is different from the old ones. These throttles, you go clockwise to turn it up, counterclockwise to turn it down. On your big way, you have the black lever which will lock your big way in place. You should actually keep it out so when you hook up to the hydrant, and if there's some kind of twist in the hose, this will hopefully get it out. If you don't, and you have it here where it's locked and that clicks, that's just going to tighten up your LDH and could actually loosen up your big way. With this control for the deck gun, if I open this, there's also a control on the top which will also correspond and spin. So if you're running the deck gun and I have you have enough pressure for the deck gun, you can control it at the top and open it up whenever you're ready. This is your RPMs for your engine. When you are throttling up, when you get to 100 on this should be about 1,000. Okay? So if for some reason your gauges would freeze, if you know that when this is at 100, this is at 1,000, you should know you got at least 100 pounds of pressure. So when you're throttling up, just during your 700 check, pay attention to your RPMs and where it's at on your gauges. Your oil pressure, your engine temperature should range anywhere between 200 to 210, and your voltage should always be at 13 or higher. These are your controls for your lights. You have your panel lights, which control these over here. Your hose bed, there's a hose bed light at the top. This is an alarm silencer. If this drops below 11, you can silence it by pushing that in. Your pump engage light, this will be green when your pump is engaged, and if you need for emergency, you can hit your air horn. This is your water indicator. There's one here, but there's also one up on the top here, on the other side, matching. When this starts to go down, as it gets to about 3/4, it'll turn to blue. Once it gets to about half, it'll go to yellow. Down to 1/4, a little lower, it'll turn to red. We'll show you here in a minute. We opened up a discharge on the other side, and you'll see how it changes. This is the ladder rack operations. These controls are on the opposite side of the rig. You come over and turn it on. Press down, which will bring the ladders down. Want to hold it for 4 seconds. Let it out. Take them up. It's the same thing, just go a different direction. If for some reason the ladder comes down and it's crooked. If you hold this down for 4 seconds, it'll recalibrate itself to even itself out. Same with going up, the same way. If you get it up there and it's not even, if you hold it for 4 seconds up, it'll recalibrate itself and sit evenly. Okay, when you're putting this down, remember, cabinet doors cannot be open. If the cabinet doors are open, the ladders will not come down.
Hello, Lieutenant Craig Ellis from the Fire Shop. What we're going to talk about today is the foam operations for the new generation Rosenbauer engines. It's basically got two different types of foam systems on it. It's got the old style, what we'll call the old school foam system that we're used to, that we've been working with for ever since I've been on the job. And that is actuated by your air switch over here. What this does, what this actuates is the on-off switch for your foam tank, the onboard foam tank. That allows foam to go from the tank to your discharge on the officer side that you'll have to use an adductor with, or also allows foam to go up top to the deck gun if you're going to use a nozzle up top with your deck gun and flow foam with that. The other type of system that's on this rig is the Elkhart onboard eductor system. Works the same as our previous system, except for your eductor is within the pump house. There's certain steps you got to do to flow foam with this onboard eductor system. Start with your air valve here on the pump panel. Flip that over to open. Next you want to go to a hand valve over here. It's marked foam on off. It's just a quarter turn. Turn that a quarter turn to on. The next is your percentage. We want to flow this at 3%. You got to push it in and turn it to 3%. That gives you your settings for your eductor. The last step in the process is pulling your foam discharge. What this will do is it allows water to come out of your discharge for your foam. What will come out is your foam product mixed at 3% with your water out of this discharge down here on the lower right hand side of the pump panel. And it's the same from there. You hook up your 1 3/4 line to it, take that out up to 200 feet away from the pump panel. You'll have the air aspirating nozzle hooked up to it. Engine pressure, we're going to run it at 200 psi like we have in the past, and you should have good foam out of it. When you're done flowing foam and you want to clean the system out, just reverse your actions. You want to shut your foam discharge, shut your foam valve off, and come over here and shut your air valve to closed position. You want to take your percentage up to 6%, open up your foam discharge, open up your foam flush. This will flush out the onboard eductor system. You want to do that for about 60 seconds or until you have just water coming out of your nozzle. If you'd want to use this discharge just as a standard hand line, you can do that. Just don't open up any of the foam valves. Just open up your foam discharge. That way you can use that discharge as a standard hand line.
There's something back there.
With this new generation of rigs that we are now starting to bring into service, these rigs are equipped with what's called the Vehicle Data Recorder System, otherwise known as a black box. This black box will tell information in regards to the engine RPM, the engine throttle percentage, the vehicle speed, the ABS events, transmission range information, parking brake position, master warning position, seatbelts occupied, and seatbelt status. Be advised, if you're in one of these rigs and it is involved in an accident, information from the black box can be obtained. Per our policy, seatbelts should be worn in the apparatus at all times when in motion. The black box will record all information on whether the seatbelt was engaged or not being worn at the time of the incident.